The world is sleeping on him. A former first rounder for the San Francisco Giants is proving his talent at the high A level in 2026. We'll break down his future with the club and what it may look like here on SF Giants Digest. If it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. I am your host, Michael Monreal. If it's not your first time, welcome back to SF Giants Digest. Now, before I get into today's video, if you haven't yet, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. About 75% of you guys watch the videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. It's completely free, takes just a second of your time, and really does help the channel continue to bring the best Giants content and analysis on YouTube. So if you enjoyed today's video, have been enjoying the past videos over the last week or so, make sure to go down below and hit that button. Like I said, it really does help us out, and it would be much appreciated by myself and everyone over at Digest Media. Now, Gavin Kilen. This is the guy we were talking about in today's video, and I would argue he tends to be not forgotten about necessarily because he is still a very highly touted prospect, but he tends to be put in the back of people's minds just because of how good the top three shortstops in the system are. Of course, I'm talking about Joshua Gonzalez, Luis Hernandez, and Johnny Level. Now, the guy that doesn't get brought into a lot of those conversations is Gavin Kilen. And no, he's not, or I wouldn't say he's not as good, but he doesn't have nearly the amount of upside that those three have, but he's still a very formidable prospect within the San Francisco Giants system. Now, this year at high A with the Eugene Emeralds, he's putting together a very strong season in his first full professional year. He's slashing 288, 359, 465, good for a 120 WRC plus. He's striking out just 14.1% of the time, which we'll get into where that lands in the entire Northwest League. Walking 10% of the time. That's a pretty good number. You know, that strikeout to walk ratio looks relatively strong right now. One of the things he does not do is strike out. He simply does not like to do that. He's driven in 59. I believe that is up there in terms of the Northwest League as well. He has 8 home runs, which is a pretty strong number considering the fact that this is a guy who is not necessarily expected to run into a lot of power throughout his professional career, and this is all in just his first 68 games. So, you know, being about halfway through his first full season, I wouldn't be surprised to see these numbers even tick up a little bit. Now, if he gets promoted to Richmond with the Flying Squirrels, then that likely won't happen because that's a tough league to adjust to, a tough league to hit in overall. But right now, the fact that he's mashing like this in Eugene is a good sign for his first professional season with the San Francisco Giants. And this comes after a pretty rough debut last year after getting drafted, where he hit just 205, was just getting on base 279, not slugging whatsoever. He did have 5 RBIs and 5 runs, but a WRC plus of 58 in the California League with the San Jose Giants. Just a pretty rough debut overall, but it was just 10 games. He was dealing with some injuries to the lower half, and just you can't take a lot from that sample that we saw in San Jose. You take a lot more from the 68 games we've seen in high A this year, and it shows a lot of confidence in him from the San Francisco Giants that, yeah, even though he struggled in low A, they still started him in high A this year, and he has had no issue getting used to that league up in Eugene. Now, I mentioned where the strikeout rate ranks in the entire Northwest League, and these are the top 2 hitters in the league by strikeout rate. And guess what? Number 1 is another Giants prospect, that is Trevor Cohen, but 14.1% of the time is what Gavin Kilen has done to start his first full season, and both of these guys really, but Gavin Kilen fits exactly the mold of what Buster Posey, Zach Manassian have seemed to like in their first 2-ish years of running the ball club. It's guys who make a lot of contact, do not strike out whatsoever. These guys walk actually a good amount compared to what Buster Posey and Zach Manassian have seemed to like, obviously with how bad the Giants are in terms of getting those free passes. But right now, these are the 2 guys in the entire Northwest League of high A that are striking out the least, and it seems like that is something that Buster Posey has clearly placed a high emphasis on because he wants guys that are going to hit for a high average and not strike out. Look at Luis Arias. Look at some of the trades they made at last year's deadline. Drew Gilbert does not strike out a lot. Jesus Rodriguez obviously hits for a lot of average in AAA. So a clear direction that he wants to go with the players in this system, and Gavin Kilen and Trevor Cohen, but more importantly, Gavin Kilen is perfectly exemplifying what they want to do with some of their prospects within the system. Now, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you know, but Gavin Kilen really put a name for himself out there in the college world under none other than Tony Vitello, of course, the current manager of the San Francisco Giants. And I wouldn't say it's all because of Tony Vitello, obviously, but it was Tennessee's a very strong program when it was under Tony Vitello, and Gavin Kilen was not anywhere near a first-round pick before heading over to Knoxville. Now, getting into some of those specific numbers, it's pretty clear in 2025 with the Volunteers, a 357, 441, 671 slash line, good for a 139 WRC plus. And the biggest outlier is the fact that he ran into a lot more thump being at Tennessee, especially considering the fact that he was facing the toughest pitching in the entire country, being in the SEC, which is obviously the best conference in the entire country. But in 2024 at Louisville, he was a good hitter, no doubts about that. 330, 361, 591, but the lack of thump wasn't really helping him whatsoever, and he didn't walk whatsoever in his second year at Louisville, and that resulted in him being below average technically with a 99 WRC plus. So going to Tennessee, learning to walk more, running into a few more long balls, and just being a better hitter overall really jumped his stock in the MLB draft, and that's what made the Giants pick him 13th overall last year, and he was Buster Posey's, Zach Manassian's first ever first round pick. Now, he was a safer pick, I will say that, but I think that's exactly what the Giants wanted to do. Yes, Buster Posey could have gone with an extremely high ceiling but a low floor and said, hey, we're going to go for this thing, try and get a 50 home run hitter out of the first round. But being with it being his first round pick ever, his first round pick, he wanted to be safe. He wanted an almost certified big leaguer, and that's kind of what Gavin Kilen is. Now, going off of RM Layton, he's a prospect guy that I trust with my life over at Just Baseball. This was his total outlook on Gavin Kilen a year ago. So this has been a little outdated, and I'd assume it's higher now that he's shown some signs in high A. But he said with only one pick in the first 2 rounds, the Giants wanted to get it right, and they have a great chance in doing so by taking the high floor of Kilen. Of course, if he can stick at shortstop, his outlook is bolstered even further. But even with a move to second base, Kilen has the ingredients across the board to be an above-average regular. Now that's extremely encouraging words from Layton, obviously. The fact that he thinks Kilen can be an above-average regular already a year ago is a really encouraging thing to hear. And then also considering the fact that they thought they wanted to be safer by taking the high floor of Kilen. That's exactly what I was saying earlier. They didn't want to take the riskier pick and go in with a guy who could hit 40 home runs, but could also never make the big leagues like a Marco Luciano or something like that. So they wanted the safer route, and that's exactly what they get with Gavin Kilen. Now, where he fits in the future of the San Francisco Giants is a loaded conversation. Now, he is a little bit more ahead of schedule than the 3, young shortstops in terms of Johnny Level, Luis Hernandez, and Joshua Gonzalez, but he's not that far ahead when you really think about it, because those guys are going to be relatively quick movers. Johnny Level's already at high A with him, and so I'm really interested to see what the Giants do with all of those middle infield prospects in, say, 2 years. Now, Gavin Kilen, a move to second base makes too much sense. He could stick at shortstop if he wanted to, but because of the other 3, I just don't necessarily see it happening. But the fact that he's showing these signs early makes him seem like he's ready to make a jump to Double-A relatively soon, and he wants to be a future piece of this organization, especially considering the fact that his college skipper is now the manager of the big league club. Now, make sure to go down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on Gavin Kilen, his first full season in minor league baseball, and what do you want to see from him going forward. Make sure to let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. That would be much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching.